Applications of ICT to Wildlife Preservation Efforts in India by Dr. Prabhat Ranjan. Professor Prabhat Ranjan was educated in Netarhat School near Ranchi, IIT Kharagpur and Delhi University. He received his PhD from University of California, Berkeley, where he carried out research on nuclear fusion at Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory during 83 to 86. Since then, he has carried out research in nuclear fusion area at Saha Institute of Nuclear Physics, Calcutta, and Institute of Plasma Research, Gandhinagar. He was made project leader of the largest operational Indian fusion reactor, Aditya, at Institute for Plasma Research in 96. From 2002 onwards, he is professor at Dhirubhai Ambani Institute of Information and Communications Technology, Gandhinagar. His current interests include embedded systems and sensor network. Preparation is going on for developing and deploying sensor networks to study behavior of wildlife in India in collaboration with Wildlife Institute of India. I suppose Dr. Prabhat Ranjan will make an explosive presentation.
And to see how to ICT enable human beings, now we move on to another area, which is how to ICT enable wildlife. Of course, in all these projects, my students are involved, and as you know that wildlife and students, there's not much difference, you don't know where they are. So, so my institute is Dhirubhai Ambani Institute of ICT, Information Communication Technology. This is an institute devoted to ICT, but we are mostly looking from technology point of view. We have certain courses which are more relevant to this audience. So why there is interest in wildlife? There is because of population growth and development in society, there is pressure on land and other natural resources from many sectors like human beings, the wildlife, all of them are trying to share the same resources. So this leads to conflict in sharing the same resources and leads to extinction of wildlife, which are very important. So studying wildlife is important because some of this is to help in conserving them. And sometimes maybe linked to some major projects. For example, in Gujarat, Narmada Canal is there. The Narmada Canal project goes through parts of Kutch and other areas where the Indian wildlife, which is one of the most extinct, very vulnerable species, is not found anywhere else. So as the canal crosses, if you don't know where the migration patterns of the wildlife, you will put blocks on the way that they would be not surviving anymore. Unfortunately, because of the terrain in which the wildlife is very difficult to study these. So most of the studies are extremely tough, and many times the human observers who are supposed to be monitoring these actually don't do their task properly and actually fill up wrong data. So you might find that you've set up a crossover at some point, but actually the animals are not using that. So what I will be doing is just briefly go through traditional methods of studying wildlife. Now introduce sensor networks and how we can be using sensor networks of wildlife. So show you one project, ZebraNet, which Princeton is doing in Kenya, which was our inspiration to start with. Then we have a number of projects that we are doing now. So wildlife is studied typically for a variety of information. I will skip those things, the locations, movements, and other things. One of the things is you use human observers or the radio collars which you can use, which is the telemetry process. But this process is infrequent data collection because of the fact that human observers have to follow eventually. The radio collars only allows you to localize animals within few kilometers, and then you actually track them. It can be mostly done in daylight, and it's difficult for species which are human side, because there are many such species. There are commercial trackers nowadays available which use GPS plus satellite uploads. These are very expensive, which means that you can only use it for very small number of devices. For example, one such example is here. Depending on the size of the animal's neck, these different devices have been made. They upload data to the satellite. The cost is extremely high, because satellite upload means 1.5 lakh rupees per year you have to pay, whether you get zero data or one data, it does not matter, you have to pay that much once you put it on. So what we are proposing is a new peer-to-peer technology-based sensor networks which avoid the satellite, it uses terrestrial communication, it actually communicates from one animal to another animal and sets up a network through which the data flows. So what is sensor network? Sensor network is small nodes. Each of these nodes has sensing, processing, and communication capability. The devices are small in size, they're low in cost, and can use very less power. So they have to be much less than the mobile devices, mobile phones that we use. Mobile phones can be charged every day or every other day. These devices, when you put on the animal, for example, or any other places, they have to remain there for years. They should be infrastructure-less operation. That is, you don't need cables for power supply, or don't need cables for data communication. The sensor network technology has become possible today. It's not a new concept, but because of development in technology, because of other mass market products like mobile phones and so on, this sensor network technology has become economic and it's applicable to many areas, including agriculture, health sector, and so on. For example, applications, depending on the kind of sensors you use, it can be applied to many sectors. I'm skipping these details. Environmental applications are there, agricultural applications are there. I would have liked to give a talk on this. Looks like if I look at this audience, that many of these would have been more interesting. But I'm skipping this. There's the health applications. Many such applications there, including defense. For example, one example I'll give here of this disease called Phytophthora, which is a fungal disease which attacks potato. If we know the microclimatic conditions which are right for this, then we can warn people to take care of preventing this in early stage. In fact, we have made systems, and I will come to this just towards the end, which can help in this. In fact, there was the first session, there was discussion about being able to do these tasks. So we actually made these devices which are monitoring microclimate, and they give very localized information, which means that you can, every 100 meters, you can get the details that you need to predict whether a certain disease is going to be striking or not. I'll come back to my main topic, that how sensor networks can help in wildlife research. The type of data it can give is location tracking, biometric information, activity, what animal is doing, and even to the extent that we are contemplating that we could put a camera on the head of the animal which can take a picture of what it is doing itself and transmit it back to us. We can do land as well as aquatic coverage. It can be continuous monitoring without any personal tracking required, and the data is available at researchers' locations. They don't have to track the animal, it will come to their place. It can do monitoring for a long time, for example, 1 year or so, and it covers a very wide area, the area that is inhabited by the wildlife. We'll start with case studies. One is Jabranet project, and one is our own project, which we are calling WildSense. Jabranet project is being done by Princeton in Kenya. This was the project that inspired us. So you can see this on the left side, the Jabra is being fitted with this device. On the right hand side, we have ICT enabled Jabra, e-Jabra you can call it. So you can see the collar on the Jabra's neck. The black spot that you're seeing are solar cells, small solar cells which try to recharge the device. The GPS data was being taken. In this particular case, only GPS data was being taken, and the goal was to do it for 3 minutes. Every 3 minutes, take this data, and continue doing this for about a year. They were not in a position to use any fixed base station because the Kenyan forest, they felt that it would be vandalized if they put something, so they had a mobile base station. The basic system that works, the zebras typically move in what is called harem. One zebra, a male zebra with maybe 5-6 female zebra. Typically, so you will put in one of them, say you can put on a male zebra. Now you have harem A and harem B. Each one of them is carrying this device, and as they come in communication range, A and B exchange their data. So A data goes to B and B data goes to A. Now let's say the another harem comes in communication with range with B. Now harem B and C will exchange data, so now both of them will have B, A and C data. So this way the data keeps on flooding each other, it keeps on moving. And then you have a mobile van coming with a basis which comes in communication range with say C, then it transfers all the data that it has. So this is how the data migrates. The latency here is going to be large because data is not instantaneously available, but it's not important. What is more important is that you get all the data as much as possible. So that is the goal. Possibility in Indian context, there are many possibilities. For example, we are working with swamp deer in Jhalmil Jheel area in Dehradun, Haridwar belt with Uttaranchal government, forest department. This is macaca, which is the common monkey, Wildlife Institute campus in Dehradun. Turtles, small turtles which are inhabiting the Wildlife Institute campus. Then other species like gill lion, Himalayan oarf, Indian wild ass. Then we have a sea turtle project that we are working with Wildlife Institute again. There are hyenas, for example, the human side. There are migratory birds, vultures have been becoming extinct. All of these species, many of them can be studied using the technology in Indian context. The WildSense project, which is our project, in this case what we are doing is that actually we are putting a GPS device, as you can see. We have a GPS device here with an antenna. There is a microcontroller which is actually linking all these things together. So GPS giving it position information, then we have temperature, humidity, activity. Activity here means that you monitor the neck movement of the animal. You monitor the neck movement of the animal, you come to know what it might be doing. For example, grazing, the neck will be down and so on. So we monitor the neck movements and the ambient light. the temperature, humidity, and light actually tells us that what is the kind of microclimate that the animal prefers. So not only we come to know where it is going, but we also helps us in knowing why it is preferring certain paths. So this is something that we have added, the ZebraNet project did not have. How this data is put into the flash, and there is a solar cell here trying to charge this. Of course, solar cell may not work all the time, either because the animal has gone into mud or it's there is no sunlight. All of this is combined together, and there is a RF transceiver here which uses Zigbee technology. The Zigbee technology shares the same bandwidth, same frequency, that is 2.4 gigahertz with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, but Zigbee is much more power saving. So that means the device is mostly sleeping. As the power has to conserve, the device mostly sleeps. 99% of the time it sleeps, only 1% of the time it wakes up, and so on. So that's why this Zigbee technology is being used in this case. Based on this, we have carried out tests. This is Sabarmati riverbed. Thankfully, it was dry at that time. This is the left bank and there is the right bank here. These nilgais, originally we were trying to actually put this device on this. Nilgais are actually on both sides of the Sabarmati river. There is a Gir Foundation there, which has in their area, they have these nilgais. There was a bridge on this where the students are setting up a base station on that. You can see the antenna here. And there's a laptop connected to this. And then the students carry this device, this is just a test device prototype. Inside this is the Zigbee transceiver, this is the GPS module, and this one is the microcontroller here. Sorry. This device, the students, you can see they are carrying this device into the thing, and we collect, the data is being collected at the base station. You can see the students collecting data here. All of this is now put through, actually we have used the Google Earth here. We put this data, and you can see these spots through which the students have moved. This is the bridge where we started. This is the bridge actually, and they came to this place where was structure there. They stopped here. This water was not there at the time we were doing, but the Google Earth is showing you a old snap. So this confirmed that our device is working well. So this prototype was tested first, and then we took up 3 projects with Wildlife Institute, which are being funded under. We have signed a MOU with them under a collaborative research proposal. They are being funded. First one will be using the same technology, that is GPS-based device. We will try it out in these monkeys called rhesus macaca, which is in the Wildlife Institute campus, which will give us an idea of whether our device works nicely, because we know the location of these monkeys. You can track them easily. After that, we plan to use this in the swamp deer. This has been discovered recently, last 1.5 years or so. We don't know about where they come from, where they go, and so on. This is a very nice, from my point of view, because it inhabits open grassland. And as you can see, picture was taken last year in May. And the summer time, and this is basking in sun. That means the solar cell will work very nicely. Right there is a tower here, Forest Watch Tower, which we can use to set up our base station. So this is very exciting from technology point of view, because it's likely to be very successful. This is the GPS-based system that we have developed. The second one that we are doing is the GPS-less tracking of small animals. We have small turtles and mongoose within their campus. They want to track. We can't put GPS on this because the battery sizes are large and these animals are very small, so our limits are about 20 to 25 grams. So what we are doing there is that we are setting up a grid of receiving stations, and this can be done because this is within the campus. And as the animal moves through this, we'll track this based on the signal strength. So the way it works is that you have this, suppose this small turtle here, it is sending out a RF beacon, which is received by all these receiving stations. And then we translate that. For example, we could look at the signal strength and translate that into distance and do a multilateration. Or there are many other methods. For example, you can look at the angle of arrival of the signal and try to use the angle of arrivals to localize the animal where it is in this grid. The terrain is very tough here. This vegetation is there, the water is there all over the place. So we are trying out various algorithms, and we don't know at this stage which one is going to work best. Okay. So all of these, there are 3 methods we are trying, in fact, and in each of them there are a number of algorithms that we have to try. In fact, you can see one of the experiments we're doing, where we're measuring the signal attenuation versus distance. This is the ideal curve, and what you're seeing is a lot of fluctuation on top of that. So this kind of problems we are facing, which is expected, of course, and it will decide how much error margins would be there. The other thing we are doing is that in these cases also we're putting microclimate sensors, which will monitor the habitat through which the animal moves. In fact, they go into a period of hibernation. For example, around October, November, they go into hibernation, and then they come out in February or March. And so that period we'll be monitoring also. We'll know exactly when it went to hibernation, what was the climate, the microclimate, and when it comes out. So all these information would be available to us at the end of this period of experimentation that we are doing with them. The third project that we are doing is with the camera traps. Actually, we have covered one set of animals which are medium to large weight size where we can put GPS. The second one is very small animals where we can't put GPS. Third one are animals like king of the jungles, like lions or the tigers. They actually move through their Rajpath. Rajpath means the path, the road for the kings. That means they don't go into sideways. They have their path well defined. If they're not hunting, they move on well defined trail. So normally the researchers, what they put these camera traps, which has infrared beam. Infrared, you can see one of them is set up here, an infrared interceptor. As the animal moves through that, the camera takes a picture. Now what the Wildlife Institute does, actually, you can see one of these animals here. The Wildlife Institute does is that it deploys 50, 60 of these cameras in the evening when they want to monitor over a 100-kilometer range or so. They go back in the morning, collect all these cameras back, and again maybe they go back in the evening and put it because the cameras get stolen. In spite of all this care, also cameras get stolen. So as you can see that some of these cameras are commercial cameras which can be used by common people. There's a value in the market. Instead of doing this, what we suggested to them that we use the miniature cameras. The cameras are the size of a map, even smaller. It's like a mobile phone. You see the small cameras that are used in the mobile phone. So very small cameras. We put a motion sensor along with this. It will detect the motion of the animal, and we do a wireless communication from the camera to the base station. So all this together, what it means is that the cameras can be deployed, and these have to consume very less power. So the camera can be deployed and left there. As and when the animal comes in, it will take the picture and transmit it instantaneously. Of course, many of the animals come out in the night. So what we are doing is that we are actually developing infrared-based system. That means it will be taking infrared pictures in the night, and it will have infrared illuminator. That means as it detects the motion of the animal, it will illuminate the animal. It will not use white flash. It will illuminate by infrared, so animal will not notice. Otherwise, animals get annoyed, and then it will take the picture and transmit it. So this is the third project that we are working on. If it is successful, it will use all over India for the tiger sensors, which is a major project. There are thousands of these devices in use. I will leave out the technical details. Right now, we are going to be using GPRS device because first trials we are doing is within the Wildlife Institute campus. After that, we'll be putting in the wild. We will be using Zigbee, and then there are mobile signals available on top of the hill. So we'll be using Zigbee technology to transfer the signal to the top of the hill, and there we'll be using a Zigbee to GPRS gateway we are making. The gateway will transfer the data to GPRS, and then through mobile network, it will be at the researcher's workstation. The actual image that is captured is put into JPEG format and compressed and sent. Fourth project, I will not give details of this, but this is a sea turtle project. Here actually the technology is going to completely change. The reason it's going to change is that we'll be doing underwater communication. We'll no longer be able to use RF communication, we'll be doing acoustic communication, and the turtles, as they move into the sea, they will be talking to each other through this device. This is a complete different technology. It's underwater technology. You can see, for example, one such device is being used here. This actually uploads the data to satellite. So what we are proposing here is that we'll be using, again, avoiding satellite, we'll be using underwater communication, and measure not only the position of the turtle, but also measure the salinity level, the depth, the temperatures, and so on through which it moves. The important part of this study, there are two aspects of this. One is that as the sea turtles, they come back to lay their eggs at the same place where they were born, and they keep coming back. They go into the sea, and they come back. They go to thousands of kilometers, and they come back to the same place. So it's not known how do they navigate. For example, how do they find the landmark to come back to the same place? This is a puzzle that has not been solved so far. What we are proposing to do is to put a magnetic sensor that will find out the direction of the magnetic field. We'll try to see whether the Earth's magnetic field plays a role in navigating these turtles through their path. So that means if we measure the magnetic field component and we correlate to the Earth's magnetic field lines, we might be able to get a clue. So this is one of the issues that we are trying to tackle here. In addition to that, what is happening is that, for example, Orissa coast and many other places, when these go into the sea, then areas where the fishing ships or trawlers have been told that you should not go into those areas. Now, the people who are responsible for debarring these areas, they are very conservative because they want to debar very large areas, which means that the fishermen which are trying to fish have a conflict with that because they want to fish into those areas, but those areas are exactly being demarcated. The reason why this is done because we don't have precise information available as to where these sea turtles are moving. So using these devices, which is about one-tenth cheaper than what these devices cost, we'll be able to monitor many more of these. So that means, like, for example, one of the projects, they are planning to use 70 of these devices, which is costing about 3 crores of rupees. Instead of that 3 crores of rupees, actually we can monitor about 700 of these. So if we put these devices, then we'll exactly know where they are going and where they are coming back from. We'll have very precise information. We'll know actually to tell the fishermen which area they should not really be going to disturb these. So that kind of resource conflict can be avoided by using this device.
Prabhat Ranjan, could you
Yes.
kindly conclude in 2 minutes?
Yes, I will do that. Now, I will. We are making a test bed. I wanted to show this because it has application. I will leave out the details here. You see, this test bed has sensing, processing, communication, power capability. This is a flexible test bed that we are making. This is the first prototype that we had made. Now we are making a second prototype. In this thing, we are adding sensors. For now, sensors we are using are microclimate sensors, temperature, light, humidity, and atmospheric pressure. So many of the uses where you need agriculture for agriculture purpose or animal health purpose, you need the microclimate information. These devices can be used. They don't need power. They don't need any cable for data, transferring the data. They would have their own communication system. They talk to each other through peer-to-peer communication, transfer this information. Originally, we were developing this for Reliance Agro Initiative in Jamnagar, where we are planning to deploy 5 low-cost automatic weather stations. Right now, we are actually deploying this on a more general basis. So about 100 we are trying to develop these devices. We have also actually added a vibration sensor which will detect Earth's movement. So it can be used to look at the seismic movements which had affected Gujarat few years back. The sensor board can be changed and everything else can remain. Depending on the application that we have, we can change these things and make it specific to the application. Of course, eventually when we make, this is right now a test bed, so we can change everything. Eventually when we deploy it in application, also be integrated into a small device. So summarizing this, the successful application of ICT to wildlife research in India would give us a better way to resolve conflict with human and wildlife resource needs. In the sensor network research that is needed for this requires combined knowledge about fields of computer science, electronics, computer physics, etc. This is body of knowledge has been encapsulated in the form of ICT. That is the course that we offer. We have BTech, MTech, and PhD in ICT in our institute. We have about 1,200 to 1,300 students in our 50-acre campus. Most of the students are supposed to be resident. One program that I wanted to mention here is the MSc ICT in Agriculture Rural Development. This program was running for a few years as a MS IT in Agriculture. Now we have relaunched it with MSc ICT in Agriculture Rural Development from this year. This is useful for graduates with agriculture background and related fields, and they are given a 2 years master's program where they are hopefully can be useful to many of the work that I've heard here. These students can be very valuable. So I'll stop my talk here. Thank you.